And again, welcome, hello, and thank you for joining us at APH's Access Academy. Today's presentation is Building Accessible PowerPoints, and we are delighted that you are with us today. Our presenter is our very own National Director of Outreach Services, Leanne Grillot. And we have so much that we're going to learn from her today and her wealth of experience with building PowerPoints and being our lead person behind our Access Academy webinars on this end. So we are glad to have you. And for our objectives today, just so that you are aware of what the learning will be, we are going to identify which color texts and sizes, animations are best for audiences with low vision. We're going to distinguish between layouts and experiment with checking order of slide content, something that I learned just recently how to do. And we will be identifying reasons for alternative text and how to locate the place for alternative text and designing it. So without further ado, oh, no, not yet. We have some more objectives that we can cover. We're also going to identify what types of tables to include and how to make them accessible. Creating accessible links within PowerPoint presentations, that is so important, and also identifying 2 ways to check for PowerPoint accessibility. Those were things I didn't know about as well before coming here. So really excited to get to learn more today. So without further ado, Leanne, we are ready to charge forward with the learning today. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. The first thing I'd like to share with you is I am by no means this ultimate expert in PowerPoint nor on accessibility, but I do know the struggle is real, that there are many people out there creating PowerPoints that are visually appealing, but are not quite accessible, and they just don't know that they're not. So this is the beginning way to kind of scratch away at the surface. There are going to be some of you out there that actually know a different way, a better way, or an alternative way to do something that I'm going to suggest. And I get that. You're welcome to share with everybody and all in the chat to all panelists and attendees. I by no means know all of those pieces. I will tell you that right now I am using PowerPoint 2016. That's the one that I have access to. Some of you have a newer version, some of you have older versions. So a few of these pieces might be more of a struggle or a little bit different for you. And there's nothing much that I can do about that except to share the one that I'm using so you understand my point of reference. So let's get going. First and foremost, you have to design for your audience. And if we can teach people that they may have a person with low vision in their audience, that's the first step. Sometimes you can tell them to put themselves in those shoes and stand actually inside their shower and look through the shower curtain, because there is usually a blur and shadow created just by that. Sometimes that's the way to really have an understanding of wait, pause, think about it. Darn, print your PowerPoint, hold it up outside that shower curtain and see how fuzzy it can be. It's just a beginning to thinking about our audience first. Okay, we're going to start. There is a handout, and if you are someone who likes to follow along and kind of fill in the blanks, you know you're listening well, I gave you one of those. There are blank spots for you to kind of listen and pay attention. Don't worry if you don't catch them all. I actually gave you all the answers as well. My hope is that you'll use the handout while you're creating PowerPoints, or hand them to other teachers or individuals who are creating PowerPoints to help them out. So let's start. Texts, templates, and layouts. What is good text contrast? Now, there are many options out there, and PowerPoint gives you all sorts of colors available to you. These are the ones that I would recommend using for good text contrast. The first is white text on a dark green background, yellow on a violet background, yellow on a dark blue background, black on a yellow background, or pink on a black background. Now, if your PowerPoint's background is already white and you're keeping it white, the text colors to consider for good text contrast are dark red, violet, black, or dark blue. Again, PowerPoint gives you many, many options. Think about the contrast color. That's just the first in the beginning to thinking about it. Next, let's think about the backgrounds. Because there are multiple choices, look for ones that are simple, possibly just having one color, not with tons of graphics put on there. If you really are looking for color and you want to go with more than one color, pick two color gradients such as white with a pastel color, or two pastel colors that are adjacent on a color wheel. Definitely avoid gray. Avoid gray for text and for background colors. And also avoid text with shadows. Sometimes the PowerPoint comes with those shadows already built in, and what you want to do is just take that off. The shadows actually create gray if you think about it. So remove those shadows. Let's look at the PowerPoint example I have for you. So I gave you a crappy PowerPoint to really play with and to try to demonstrate. That's the one that I'm sharing on the screen. I'm on slide 2. Slide 2 immediately tells you something's wrong. When you look at slide 2, what do you see? Feel free to drop it in the chat. What I see is kind of a gray black background. Not the best choice, is it? What about the color? The text definitely isn't a good color. It's actually gray. So if we actually chose to change that text, we could go and change the font maybe to a bright yellow at least, so that it could be seen on the background. Again, this is an example of looks really cool, but it's not really accessible. So think about those color choices that you make and go in and actually edit them. But we're definitely not done there. And I'm sure a lot of you can tell, wait a minute, that's still not very good, is it? So let's move on. Some of you already talked about that text that was inside there and noticed the size and the font. So let's talk first about font. Sans serif fonts are the best ones to use. So Verdana and Arial are two that come to mind pretty quickly. Tahoma is another one, Antique Olive, Helvetica, and I'm probably butchering those names. Again, what you want to look for is font that has clear, straight lines. Now, size. Some of you caught the size. The minimum font size anywhere in the PowerPoint should be 28 points. Shoot for 44 for the title. 36 is good for text content. But if we've got to go to the smallest one, these are the ones to use. Headings at 32, subheadings at 30, text at 28. But I highly suggest moving larger for all of those. Now, hopefully you've noticed I have not used color as a way to convey information. And if for some reason you're using color, you want to think about avoiding red, green, and orange. Consider using textures instead if you really need color on graphs and charts. To place emphasis on words in PowerPoint, use underscoring, quotations, and bold. I put 32 points in quotes, I underlined 30 points, and I bolded the 28 points. Now, I would definitely not recommend using all three on the same slide. I was doing this for demonstration of what those would look like. What you're really trying to do is eliminate italics and highlighting, which seem to be favorites of people who are light dependent. So try to Work with people to have them using quotes, underlines, and bold. Now transitions, that animation that happens. Animations are something that occurs. If at all possible, don't use them. But if you have to use them, think about ones that aren't very complex, because the complexity actually disturbs things in a screen reader. It can cause the screen reader to reread slides or to read things out of order. It also doesn't give some people enough time to read the slide content. Flashing, quick moving may cause seizures or vertigo. If you must use animation, I've got 3 for you to think about. The first was fly in from the left. The second is wipe right. And the third, really kind of the easiest of them all, is appear. Think about that. And while we're going with text and animation, if you have an embedded video, ensure your video is captioned. And if there's embedded audio, include a transcript. Again, accessibility for all. Now, a little bit about templates and themes. Design tabs contain these things. Many of the design tab themes that are built in provide you a variety of colors to choose from. Some have low contrast, so look through them for a good contrast. Think about that text and color that we talked about earlier. And look for a simple background. Many of them are pretty busy. Choose that theme with a good contrast and a simple background. But as many of us do, we get bored with that visual picture and we want something new. Microsoft actually has an accessibility PowerPoint template sampler that are already pre-built to be accessible. So think about using those. And again, when you get tired with those, when you search for templates online, add the word accessible, because many times a person will tag it because they've already put that thought into mind. If you really like a theme that you see out there, but you want to globally change the font size, the font type, the font size, or even some of the contrast, you can actually use something called a slide master. And we'll get into this in a minute. This is a place you have control over the theme, the layout, the background, those colors, and the fonts and the positions. There are 2 things in that font, and I've got to move something out of my way so it's out of my way. However, you change the top slide in a slide master, it changes everything. There are sub slides inside the slide master that only change that particular layout. I talk about layout because you want to select the layout before you add content. You want to pick the slide that best conveys the information you want to give in the beginning. And that can be hard because there are many people who build their PowerPoints from scratch and haven't really thought about what they want to add to the content. You can change the layout of an existing slide on your Home tab by selecting Layout, and we'll go through that. But this usually works well if you start with a layout choice in the first place. In other words, avoid using the blank slide. The blank slide in and of itself is not a layout. It's blank. When you think about slides, slides need titles. And you should have a descriptive title on every slide. This helps a screen reader read and navigate the presentations. In the event that you don't want the title visible, realize you're still helping an individual who can't see navigate. So you can actually write a title and hide it. And I'm going to show you how. The other thing you want to do is you want to check the reading order of your slides. Now, this was a lot of technical jargon, so let's do a little bit with this, okay? First, let's figure out what is the selection panel that I'm talking about. The selection panel is located in your home row, your home tab, and it's under the editing. Many of us who are visual are very used to looking for the magnifying glass to find things inside. It's located below there, and it says select with a little arrow by it. That's really what you're doing to get to the selection panel, and we're going to do that. Reading order of it is from the bottom up, which makes absolutely no sense. If you used to work in stage or theater, maybe you can think of it as trying to think of what the stage directions are. For the reading order, it's from the bottom up. You're going to make sure all your slides have titles. And if you had to use the same word, you're going to say slide 1 of 2 or 2 of 2, or use the word continued. And you're going to avoid creating your own text boxes. You're going to use the ones that are there for you. That was a lot. Let's get to a demonstration. Okay, so I have my big day for Happy Thanksgiving, but our font is too small. So I am actually going to highlight and make that a little larger for you by just increasing the size right now. Most of you probably realized that the slide themselves have font that is very strange. You can go in and you can highlight and you can change your font to one of the ones that is more visually acceptable so that you can see it a little better. But now I want to talk about the selection pane. And to do so, I actually have to stop my video because for some people that will actually be in the way of you seeing it. At the top bar in the home row, I'm going to go over to the selection pane. I'm going to click it, which will allow you to see the choices underneath. The choices are select all, select objects, and selection pane. I am going to select selection pane. Now, what you've noticed happen is that a box opened up on the right-hand side of the screen titled Selection. In this box, it allows you to look and see what is inside my slide. It says Content Placeholder 2, Title 1, Picture 4, reading from the top down. But does anyone remember what I said is the reading order for the selection pane? Who remembers? If you remember, put it in the chat. What is the reading order? Which way should we read? Top down, bottom up. Bottom up. I want you to hold that into your head. So on this slide, my 3 choices were Content Placeholder, Title 1, and Picture 4. What should be at the bottom of my selection pane? To help with navigation, you want to move your title to the bottom. So I'm going to pick it up and move it to the bottom of that selection pane. This is what will be read first for the person. And I know those of you who use your site are going, that makes no sense. I know it doesn't. That's the way the selection pane works. Okay, so the bottom should say Title 1. Depending on how you want your content read, you might choose your picture next. But for my slide, I really want the content read next. The picture is decoration. So to me, that's last and least important for knowledge. Some of you might be wondering, wow, I'm going to have a hard time remembering that it's bottom up. I have a few other tricks to help you, so just keep that in mind. Another thing I wanted to show you was that layout. Do you remember layout? The layout is in the upper corner by new slides. And if you're on one of the slides you've already created and you click layout, it will highlight the type of layout that slide is. The ones this was title and content. But if you paid attention to what was on my slide, I had title, content, and picture. A better choice to create this slide would have been either the to content, which would have had the title, and 2 content boxes, which might hold words, or a picture, or a table, or a graph, or smart art. I could have also chosen content with caption, which is similar to a picture. Again, I should have chosen the appropriate slide before beginning this. When I come across slides like this that I have to help someone else read, most of the time I start with a brand new layout and transfer the information over. Using correct layout is extremely helpful for your screen readers and means you don't have to do as much work in the selection pane because it's already been placed in the correct order for you. Many times, if you're helping someone else who's already created a PowerPoint, you're stuck with the selection pane and reordering things. So just keep that in mind. Using the right slide is important. I'm going to move down to my demonstration slide number 3. Demonstration slide number 3, when you look in the selection panel, has many, many, many items inside. It has title. I'm going to read from the bottom up because that's really how we should be reading. Text, it says Title 1, text box 11, text box 9, text box 8, text box 7, text box 6, text box 5, text box 4, content placeholder 4, content placeholder 10, foot placeholder 3. This means lots was added to this slide. And that can be challenging. This is a slide that I chose to take and turn into 2 slides. On its own, I didn't keep it, I made my own. And if you look over at the selection panel, you will see title, content placeholder 1 or 2, 3, and 4. Now, I have a question for you. Are you a person who likes spacing between your lines to fill up the slide, as it were, with lots of white space? Are you one of those people? I hate to admit, I'm one of those people. If you look at these, the left-hand side, it says dot 1 equals upper left, then a line space, then dot 2 equals middle left, and then a line space, and dot 3 equals bottom left. There is space in between there. I want you to hold on to that. If you are a person who does that, that's actually more challenging for your screen reader. I'm going to show you a better way to create it. Okay, I am going to get rid of those extra spaces, and I'll show you that if you highlight it and you increase your line spacing, you will create the same feeling. So I'm increasing the line space options to 2, and I've increased the same line spacing. But for a screen reader, it doesn't get those extra blank lines because to them, it reads it. Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute, Amy. Did I miss any questions that I can answer?
We have been keeping up within the chat box. Most of the questions have dealt with just conversation about that these are the steps that you are describing that can even be accessed through a screen reader, such as you describing of how to do the spacing and what I'm going to use the wrong word, but like what button to go up into the menu bar and be able to click on in order to increase that spacing. So you've been able to articulate that through and just confirming that this can go through
Yes.
steps even with the screen reader.
Yes. I will say the biggest piece that I can tell you is use the layout. The layout is really what is, it makes all the difference is using the layout.
And
Visual appeal is tricky.
Okay. Could you just review just one more time where the line spacing option is located?
Oh, hold on.
And then after that, we'll be
Sure.
ready to move
So the
forward.
line spacing option is located under the paragraph tab on the home bar. So the paragraph tab on the home bar. And so H for home is the keystroke. And K is the keystroke for your line spacing. Okay, hopefully that helped. Okay, what does the placeholder mean? The placeholder in the selection pane, such as content placeholder 2, 3, 4, are sections of information that have been built to be read. Can you enlarge your cursor and pointer and add color to it? Not in the middle of this, I can't. I apologize. Okay, and would that go for Word, making it easier with line spacing? Correct. Blank lines where you're hitting a carriage return is actually something that is will be read, will be identified with a screen reader. It thinks that that's something important. It does not know that you're doing it for a visually pleasing view. Line space typically recommended really is ease of viewing. Recognize that you don't want too much text on your PowerPoint because your goal, of course, is not to put the information in a PowerPoint, but to share it verbally. That's usually what PowerPoints are used for. If you feel you need more text, a Word document would be the better choice. And for a rule of thumb, text, and I'll go back to my happy Thanksgiving, is you should have no more than 6 bullets. No more than 6 pieces of information should be shared on your screen. Another piece of information that I neglected to share, but I will pull that out right now so that you can see it. When you have 2 pieces of information in 2 buckets and you wanted to put print in both buckets. So I had the section of text and animation where one section was talking about the types of fonts, the other was talking about the animation. Consider using 2 different colors as background to help a person with low vision understand that there are 2 columns of information, not 1 column of information. So if you're going to use 2 different boxes of text, consider having a different colored background to help identify that there really are 2 distinct different areas to look at. So that's another help for vision. Now, we did the slides with the titles. We saw a better version of it. But there is something else to talk about, and this is alternative text information. Alternative text information is to provide communication of what is important in images and other visuals. And we tend to have tons of images in a PowerPoint. The alt text provides that textual alternative to that non-text content. Now, alternative text for an image might change immensely based upon the context, and that's something to really think about. Images may have 2 different things. They may have content and they may have function. A good chunk of alternative text that you might not realize is used in computers and websites for those buttons. To you and I, they look like visual click here's and order this now. Those are visual. They're actually pictures. And for them to read correctly in a screen reader, they get alt text. And most of those have a function. They do something and take the user somewhere. This is rarely true in a PowerPoint. And in fact, most users are more comfortable with a link taking us away from the PowerPoint being something that looks like a link with a bunch of alphabet soup in there. But I want you to realize alt text is used very heavily to the screen reader user when they're navigating other locations. So I just wanted to keep that in your mind, in your forefront of what they're doing. There are steps to add alternative text, and we'll go through it. You right-click on the image, choose Format Picture, select Size and Properties, and choose the alt text. Most people have played around with that a little. Here's some good tips though. Don't enter text in the title field. Use the description field. That's the bigger box. Enter your text in the description field. Do not select Generate a Description for Me, and rarely can you use anything they generate anyway. It usually does a really bad job of telling you what it was trying to tell you in the first place. Next, realize every image gets an attribute. It gets something. You want to be accurate and equivalent. You want to identify if it's content. You want to identify if it really truly is a function going to take them somewhere. You want to be succinct, typically no more than a few words. Limit yourself to about 120 characters for simple images. Now, you don't want to be redundant. There's two different ways of being redundant. First, being redundant because you are describing exactly what was already described next to the picture or in the caption for the picture. And another is you don't want to be redundant and use the words, this is an image of, or this is a graph of. Trust me, they already know it's an image or a graph because of what you're writing inside of it. You don't need to say it's an image of or a graph of. Now, when there isn't a need for an image description, you don't leave the box blank. You use Alt equals double quote, double quote. That's what you use. We're going to get to some examples of this and really talk about it. What that is a null attribute, N-U-L-L, a null attribute in HTML. And what it does is it tells the screen reader to skip over the image. If you don't put something there, if you leave it blank, the screen reader might announce that there's an image, possibly give the image's dimensions, like that's really helpful. And it really leaves that audience member wondering, well, what is the image and is it important? Is it something I need to know? If you put a null alt attribute on the image, it will skip over it. Sometimes, depending on the system, it will read that there is a null attribute in there. So just keep that in mind. You want to use that. Okay, let's move on. I've lost my clicker. There we go. Okay. Now, remember how I said context is everything. How do you determine what to write? Now, realize this is not something I created. This is actually taken from WebAIM. And I will describe to you right now, there is a picture of George Washington or a painting of George Washington on my screen. And we're going to use this picture, and what a more fitting day to do so, right? But realize I did not do this. Okay. We are going to actually talk about this. So here is the same picture. And we're going to try to figure out what would be appropriate alternative text for this image. So I'm going to describe things for you. There's text next to this picture. It says, because of his role as the commander-in-chief of American forces in the Revolutionary War, and later, the first president of the United States, George Washington, is often called the father of his country. And then next to this text, there happens to be this picture or painting of George Washington. Okay, so what would you pick? Would you pick A, image of George Washington? Would you pick B, George Washington, the first president of the United States? Would you pick C, the empty alt attribute, alt equals double quote, will suffice? Or D, George Washington? Which would you pick? We'll give a moment, and you're welcome to type it in the chat, or you're welcome to put it in the poll. Give it a little bit more time.
We are at about almost 50% reporting. I'll get it up to 55%, and then I'll share out with you in the audience, Leanne.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and share out. So answer C was at 29%, an empty alt attribute. However, I got to say, people were also really close behind with choosing either choice B or choice D. Everything was kind of clumped together.
That's
Very
okay.
close.
That's okay. There is something to be said about the art of image description. I will tell you that. So the first step in determining appropriate alt image is to decide if the image presents content. Well, what's the content there? Now I can tell you it doesn't have a function, or I would have told you that before. It's not going to link you over to a map of where he lived or anything like that. So we're determining if the image presents content and what the content is. If the content that the image conveys is presented within the text in the surrounding content of the image, then an empty alt attribute may suffice. So those that chose that are not necessarily right or wrong. That you had quite a bit of textual information next to this picture. So it might not have been. Another true choice could have been George Washington. Now, image of George Washington, it breaks that rule of what? What did they add when they said image of George Washington? What's wrong with that one? Hopefully you got it's redundant. You don't need to say image of. Now, I would have chosen George Washington because it was a picture of him, not a picture of the Revolutionary War, not a picture of him as a commander. In other words, I might have just identified, yep, it's a picture of George Washington, possibly because I was going to call attention to it in the discussion I was having with students. But you're not wrong with either one you picked. Okay, let's do another one. What alternative text would you select for this image? It is the same image of George Washington. It is the same text around it because of his role as the commander-in-chief of American forces in the Revolutionary War. And later, the first president of the United States, George Washington, is often called the father of his country. But underneath the picture of George Washington is a picture caption that says, George Washington. Okay. What would you pick for the alt text? A, George Washington. B, an empty alt attribute, the alt equals double quote, will suffice. Image for C, or D, the image does not need an alt attribute. And I know they're coming in.
I'll go ahead and stop this now and share out so we can discuss. So 51% of our audience today felt the answer was B, an empty alt attribute. However, answer D came in second with image does not need an alt attribute.
Okay, so let's go back and look at it. So in this case, the content of the image is presented in the surrounding text as well as under it, under the picture that was presented. So actually option B, alt equals double quote, is the best choice. Typing George Washington would actually be redundant because what would happen is the screen reader would read all of the information in the text, that big chunky sentence, then read George Washington for the picture, and then read George Washington for the picture description. So it would read George Washington twice. It really would be redundant. So that alt equals double quote is the better choice. Now, option D is really never the right choice. Every image must have something in it. Leaving it blank is very challenging. If you have a system that allows you to mark it as decorative, what it's really doing is it's giving it the alt equals double quote. It realizes some people don't know how to write HTML language very well. So that's really what your decorative button is doing. Not all systems have that, and 2016 does not. I don't have that option, much as I might want it. Okay, let's try one more. Now this picture is different. This is the painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware. There is a paragraph or a sentence by it. It says, in this painting, the artist Emmanuel Lutz used light, color, form, perspective, proportion, and motion to create the composition. Okay, there is no description underneath. It's just the painting next to it. So here are your choices. A, George Washington. B, painting of George Washington. C, painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware River. D, a classic painting demonstrating the use of light and color to create composition. E, painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware River. Swirling waves surround the boat where the majestic George Washington looks forward out of the storm and into the rays of light across the river as he leads his weary troops to battle. Which one are you going to pick? I'll give you a minute.
So while people are putting in and thinking about what response, this might also be, depending on what the answer is, Leanne, to go back and we might need to review about reiterating about the maximum number of characters per image descriptions, just because that was a question that was in the chat box earlier, and I was trying to find a good time for us to circle back to get it.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and end this polling here at 60% and share. So what we found today in this survey is that 62% chose choice E, and the second biggest selection came from C, the shortened painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware River.
Okay. Now, I will tell you, in some ways, this one is sort of a trick question, because there really is no right answer here. Depending on if this was in a book or a PowerPoint or just a web page is really dependent on what information needed to be conveyed. Sometimes in a history book, it might simply be painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware River. But if this were in an art course or art history, E might really be important, or in fact, D, a classic painting demonstrating the use of light and color to create composition, was really all that was needed. It does depend on the context in which you're writing it. And I will tell you, there are many users of screen readers that bounce between what they want. I have had individuals tell me, just tell me what it is already. I want it short, simple, and sweet. And then I have other people who want that detailed description of the picture. If you are making custom-made PowerPoints tailoring to your student, you might want to ask your student, what do you like? Do you like a more descriptive piece in there, or do you just want me to get to the point and tell you what it is? Think about it. Okay. Any other questions about text? Oh, Amy, you asked me to talk a little bit about how many letters, we say 120, that's a rule of thumb. And it really, again, depends on the information you need to convey. If the picture is really conveying a bunch of information, consider actually making this a separate document for your students so that they can have it. Okay, does that help? Hopefully that answered the question.
I think that it did. One quick question before moving on. Do you know if clicking the mark as decorative box has the same effect as using the empty alt attribute?
It does, or at least that's what I've been told. I have not been able to play with it because that is not what my system offers me. So it would create the same thing. It'll skip over it. Okay, let's talk, well, I was going to say, we're going to talk about links, tables, and just a little bit more in there, okay? So first, let's talk about links. The text created by dropping a link into a PowerPoint usually doesn't make sense. And you and I both know this. We couldn't even try to read that bunch of alphabet soup that comes in there. So when creating that, think about making the link descriptive text. So you can go in and right click on the link and select edit hyperlink, and then inside that text to display, change it to the wording of where it's really going to take you. Best case though is consider a description of the link in text next to the full URL. And this is especially helpful if you were planning on printing and distributing your presentation or giving somebody an accessible PDF. It helps them understand where they're going before they click and go to it. Now, hopefully we don't need a link demonstration, but I'm going to ask you right now, do you need a link demonstration on how to put a link in something? I'm hoping people have already practiced with links on their own, but I will go back to that if you really think you need it. Oh, okay, I will go back. We will do that. That is not a problem. Okay, I am going to close my selection pane on my sample. Inside this PowerPoint, I happen to drop a link in the Happy Thanksgiving picture. There is a link in there. And on my title here, slides 3 and 4 also has a link. On slide On slide 4, my title here, a better slide, it says a link to a video. Video is a different color, which usually indicates to us that it is a link. Okay, I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to edit hyperlink. When you edit hyperlink, there is a box at the top that says text to display. For keystroke commands, it looks like the T is underlined. I used the word video, but you could have used whatever description would have made sense for that link. Down below, there's something called address. The E is underlined. And there's a big YouTube link that I really can't read because it's a bunch of alphabet soup. In this text to display, I could change it to video of body braille to be more descriptive than just video. And I select OK, and it changes it to a link to a video of body braille. So that was selecting a link. Best case, if you really want to do it well, is you take the entire address, and I copied it, and I am going to put the entire address, which is messy, next to my video of body braille. I gotta move this out of the way so you guys can see it. So in other words, it says a link to body braille, and then it is the link to body braille. Hopefully that was good. Let me get down to tables. Who likes to put tables in their PowerPoints? I wonder who likes to put tables in their PowerPoints. I know that you're going to find a lot of your general education teachers like to put tables in their PowerPoints. So these are the ones that you're usually talking to. It's not typical for teachers of the visually impaired to throw tables in their PowerPoints. So you use the table tools inside PowerPoint to make tables accessible, and we'll go through this. If there's a table already on the screen, you're going to click inside it to get access to the tools, and you're going to look for the Design tab. Again, we're going to go through it. You're going to look to make sure that the header row is checked if the top row is the header, and you're going to make the column row checked if the first column contains the headers. And if you have both column and header rows, you're going to have both of them in there. You want to look at the styles where the table headers are clear and good contrast. Thankfully, PowerPoint has those options in the design to really think about that. What you want to make sure that you and your teachers are doing is avoiding overly complex tables. Those really don't belong in a PowerPoint. If they really want an overly complex table in there, I highly suggest saving that to a PDF and then using Adobe to really make your table accessible if that's a very, very complex table. So just keep that in mind. The other rule of thumb is do not use blank cells in the table. Use a hyphen, use a star, use something to indicate there is something there, but there isn't something there, so that it is not a person thinking that their screen reader is skipping over good information that they couldn't access. So, ready for your table demonstration? Slide 5 is where I give you a table. Okay, slide 5 has the table example. The text on the side says which vehicles go more than 100. And then there's a column that says vehicle and train, bicycle, car, plane. And then a column that says speed, 120, 20, 60, 500. I want to make sure that this is accessible. So I'm going to go into the table and I'm clicking on it. So I've clicked the table. I'm going to go off again and I'm going to go on again. Now, when I'm off, there is no table tools available to me. When I click in the table, on the top area, there is a dark highlighted section that says Table Tools, and it highlights Design and Layout for me. I'm going to select the design. When you select the design on the left-hand side, you see checkboxes that say header row, total row, banded rows. The second one says first column, last column, banded column. It's on the left-hand side. Right now, my header row is selected. I'm going to unselect it. And what you'll notice is the top line is no longer bolded. If you use the table tools and build your table in PowerPoint, it will automatically assume you have headers. If it didn't assume the correct headers, then you will make sure to select the table, design, and I want the header row. If you weren't sure if it was the header row or the column row, what's nice visually is the column row would immediately show you that it has bolded the ones that it is identifying as those that header of information. The color and the contrast options in the design are available for you based on the PowerPoint template you choose. Watch for good contrast when you're looking at your tables, because sometimes when the header row gets highlighted, it might not create as bright a contrast. So the black on pink or white on pink, you might want to go and see what would provide the best contrast for your student. Again, if we didn't know the speed of a plane, I would suggest putting a star or the hyphen in that space so it is not a blank box. Okay, any table questions?
I'm not seeing anything for table questions.
Okay, let's move on. Let's check for accessibility. Wouldn't you have to define the star? Yes, I would suggest you defining the star and indicating that to your students so that they know. Many times a hyphen is what is used in charts and graphs to demonstrate there's no information in that section. So let's talk about checking for accessibility. Microsoft actually has built-in accessibility checkers. You will go to File, Info, Check Issues, and Check Accessibility, which we will do. If you use that to check for issues, the issues will disappear once you've addressed them. There is one section that will always appear, and that is the check reading order. Remember how I said it was really important? It definitely is. Checking reading order is one of those things that you should just do at the end before you get ready to send that to Adobe. Let's do a little example of that. So let's check our PowerPoint. Remember, this is not a very good one, so it's going to say some things that we really hate to hear. I'm going to go to the File button. And what I'm going to do is, usually when you go over there, you're already in the Info tab. There are three big boxes, one called Protect Presentation, another Check for Issues, and a third Manage Presentation. You are going to check for issues. When you check for issues, you have three choices: Inspect Document, Check Accessibility, and Check Compatibility. While you might want to do all of them, the one we're talking about is Check Accessibility. So I'm going to select Check Accessibility. My PowerPoint, it is reverted back to what I was looking at with the film strip view, then the slide, and on the right-hand side, it now says Accessibility Checker. This indicates where there are arrows, where there are warnings, and where there are tips. If you look at the tips, it says check reading order. You're always going to see that. Don't be surprised, even if your reading order is correct. But as you can see, I have errors. I'm missing alt text on both slides 4 and slides 5. And I have warnings. I have an unclear hyperlink, content placeholder 3. It walks you through how to fix things. Again, this is a way to check your information. Now, another way that is available to you to check accessibility is actually the outline view. So when you're in your screen, I'm going to get rid of accessibility checker for a minute. When we are in your main screen building, if you go to view and select the outline view in the presentation options, your left-hand side no longer looks like the film strip, but creates an outline view of the information in your slides. That is what a screen reader is going to read. If you notice down in my slide 4, I fixed the spacing for dots 1, 2, and 3. And you can see that all of those have been moved together and there aren't large spaces or line spaces in between. I did not do that for the second column, which had dots 4, 5, and 6. If I did that right now, what you will see happen, first I've got to get rid of the extra spaces. The extra spaces are gone, so my screen in the outline view looks good, but I want my picture to look as good, and I will go and make those. I've got extra information that we just added, so let's get rid of that for a minute and make that better. Okay, this tells you what was there. It also tells you what's not there. It gives some indications that something is missing. So you can use your outline view to also check for accessibility. As you can see, the titles, such as number 3 says, my title is here, and number 4, my title is here. I added extra information so the person who's looking at this slide with a screen reader knows that those are two distinct slides. Slide 3, while it has quite a bit of information in the slide, none of it appears in the outline view because it wasn't added using a template. Slide 4 was added with using the template. I'll bounce back. Now, we did accessibility checking, and you wonder, why is it important? Well, one of the main reasons to think about accessibility is when you import it over to a PDF. Well, why do I care if I put it to a PDF? Actually, the file size is smaller in a PDF. This is something to really think about for your students who are playing with information so quickly, trying to upload it into their computer. Consider talking to the teacher about making it into a PDF. That file size is smaller and opens faster. The other thing with exporting it to a PDF is that distracting slide transitions are removed. So those students who have trouble with things moving in and out, they're for the most part removed in a PDF. Saving it in a PDF. After you have made your PDF or your PowerPoint accessible, it will then export into an accessible PDF. I have one warning though. Those of you that use PowerPoint for Mac should be cautioned. That PDF will not yield an accessible tagged PDF when you transition over, and it has to be remediated using a program such as Adobe Pro or Acrobat Pro. When using PDF to share files, remember it's smaller. The slide distractions, transitions are removed. And if you save, open the options and ensure both the document properties and document structure tags for accessibility are checked, under the include non-print information, that information will be added into your PowerPoint for your students. I also recommend considering creating a Word file with this information, especially if there's additional information you think might not transfer over. So, such as creating highlights from the PowerPoint, similar to what I did, as I grabbed this information and I put it into a handout that was just a Word document. And then that helps everybody, not just your students who couldn't see or couldn't see well, but it actually helps everyone think about how to think about their own presentations and give more accessibility for that. Can you check the accessibility with VoiceOver? I am not sure if you can check accessibility with VoiceOver. I'm pretty sure you can. VoiceOver though and PowerPoint, there are, you're talking about using a Microsoft Office product on a Mac, and so sometimes there are accessibility issues. So I haven't used a Mac in a really long time, so that's something that you would have to check. I'm pretty sure it should work, and they should have something that would work pretty similar. Are there any other questions that I've missed? I see one. Do you know if you can change the link color in a PowerPoint? You can. That's part of your master slides. Let me go show master slides really fast. Okay. Inside a PowerPoint, when you go to view, one of your options is slide master. So this provides you with a slide master view. What the slide master view does is provides you with the master slide, which is the top one, and then all of the different layout options that are in there. If you want to change something, what you're really doing is changing your master slide. When you change this master slide, it changes the other slides underneath it. So if you're changing your master slide, it then changes the others underneath it. So what you're looking for is changing that master slide. So if I wanted to change the master slide, I could highlight and change the color. Let's see. I'll change it to hot pink. Okay. And if I go back to the presentation, so view, normal, you will see that on those slides that was the master, my title has changed because of the master slide changed all of them in there. Okay, say if you create a Word file from a table, will it put it into a linear format? Word file from a table. It could. You're going to have to look and see how the Word file was formatted.
And here is one other question. If I could circle back to something else previously, Leanne, are there differences between Office 365 subscription, which includes PowerPoint, and Office 219 non 365 subscription version with regard to PowerPoint? It's a pretty specific question. Do you know?
I can tell you that there are more improvements with accessibility the newer the version of PowerPoint. So one of the best descriptions I can give you is that I have Office PowerPoint 2016, and I know the next version allows you to mark as decorative. It doesn't mean you can't mark as decorative right now. I just taught you Alt equals double quote, double quote. I mean, I just taught you how to do that. But for those of us that forget things like that, having that little button there does make it easier. How do I add textures to my tables? You know, I have not practiced that. So at the moment, I cannot identify how I would do that in a PowerPoint. I would probably do a little research on that. Okay, I'll wait for others to come in. Let me share. Come on. Okay, so we've talked about exporting. Now, the other thing that I definitely want to say is I don't know everything there is to know about making PowerPoints accessible. I know that we try really hard, and the first place to try is to practice and to educate others. So there are website references for you, and I know Amy will drop those in the chat. You have them in the handouts. They're available to you. I suggest going through them and then recommending others go through these. That's one of the things that we really need to talk about, is sharing the knowledge of how to make things accessible. Because as you could see, starting with an accessible PowerPoint helps you in the long run make it accessible. If they use the layouts that are built in there, they use the layouts that belong to the information that they're trying to share, that will save all of the process and save you time in converting them into an accessible view for your student. So now I really am going to stop share for a moment so I can actually see what's going on. It's a little harder to, and I really want to know if there are any questions that I can answer. And I can reshare again if needed.
I think we can wait to see what happens in the chat window. I can share that we are caught up, as far as I can tell, with questions that have been going throughout.
So I have a question for all of you because I wasn't able to see it really fast. How many of you are going to take the time to take the handouts and the presentation information and take it away, use it, and educate others? I hope so. That was really my goal. Hopefully I'm preaching to some of the choir. And Amy, can you drop the link to the handouts back in there?
Certainly.
Yes, I agree. One person shared that this could overwhelm a student. I agree. This really is meant for those individuals who tend to create things and force a student to use. We know that, especially with this world having gone digital for a majority of students, one of the issues is that they believe sharing the PowerPoint meets the requirements. You know, there you go, I've shared the PowerPoint, that's what I'm going to share on the screen, and you've got it. And they don't realize how many different pieces inside that PowerPoint really weren't accessible and they weren't able to access. So I do believe that information is helpful to those that think they're sharing. Go back to slide 1 and 2. I can definitely go back to slide 1 and 2. I think you're talking about the text content and layouts. I will make sure of that, but If you're working with a low vision student, and that's one of the things that we think about is really talking to people about their contrast on text. So those are things to really think about, is what colors you're choosing and just follow through with that. So that's one of the things that we want to talk about, is encouraging people just to start right away with those good text contrasts. That's very helpful. And then the other piece is backgrounds. That's where people really, really, really like to get crazy. So thinking about simple one color backgrounds. I hate to say it, but they give way too many creative ways to do the backgrounds, when really simple is best. And commending your teachers who do that. So highlighting them in a teachers meeting, you know, and I want to say that Mrs. Smith really uses good backgrounds when she presents information through PowerPoint, and allow teachers to get the kudos that are doing it well. When you find one of their PowerPoints and you can tell they've used the layouts, compliments that they've used the layouts to build their slide deck is really helpful.
And Leanne, there was a question
Sure.
that was put in a second time, because I realized that I missed it the first time. Talking about the difference between the PowerPoint information that you shared today with Google Slides.
Mhm.
Do you know if the information is similar of what you talked about today with creating accessible slides for Google?
I haven't played with Google enough to be able to give you the quick answer. I am going to believe that Google is working to have these same procedures. I can't tell you about the alt text, though I know you can put alt text in there. I just don't know the steps. I can tell you that you can look for simple backgrounds, simple colors. And again, I am pretty sure Google Slides will export out into PDF. You'll have to look to see if it will save all of that alternative text that you put in there.
Okay.
Yes, I agree, Cheryl. I don't think Google Slides is as robust, and that's because it's free. So there's more insight here that really helps. Question is, if I was going to request a general education teacher to change their PowerPoint for a visually impaired student, what would I say? I actually would start with possibly a beginning of the year or beginning of the semester request. Give them the opportunity to learn some of these basics, such as using slide layouts or backgrounds, and encourage them to start there as opposed to backtracking the actual presentation they just made. In other words, push or encourage them to do, if they are using old PowerPoints, push them to create one new one per week instead of having them do all of them at the same time.
And another question that I saw that it came in, do you need to use alt text with tables?
You should have some indication that that is what the information is. Often the table alt text is the title, and the what is the content talking about? Like what is it? Trying to see if there's anything else. Educating local school district members to learn how to use this is important. Again, this is recorded, so you're welcome to continue to use it, and use those tips. Feel free to share. And feel free to share the websites as well for how to use it. Sometimes teaching general education teachers how to do one or two steps during each teachers meeting that you actually get the opportunity is the beginning. Even if you just start with use a layout, that right there, you could then go into the master slide and change all the font and all the background color really fast if they just used a standard layout form for every slide.
And I put in the chat window too, just a reminder that this is being recorded, and the link is I put into the chat window for you to go ahead and extract. I can share with you that in the very near future, this excellent content will be absorbed into our learning management system called the APH Hive. So if you go to our YouTube playlist and it's there one day, and then another day it is not there, you might want to head on over to the APH Hive. I'll drop that into the chat to see if it may have been absorbed into there.
And then the cheat sheet or the tips sheet that I gave, I know is like 6 pages long. Feel free to break that down into a smaller size or chewable size for your general education teachers. How can you save the chat? I don't know if you can save the chat, and I'm sorry I wasn't paying attention to what was in there. It was all the same information that was in our handouts.
Yes, we've been doing well with keeping up with dropping whatever has been placed into the chat or in the discussion into the chat. And yes, you can go ahead and copy and paste anything that you need and place it into such as a Word document.
I agree. Williams shared that there needs to be a standard for PowerPoint. I will say that that's something to consider having your agency or entity do, is create a standard for a PowerPoint. At the American Printing House for the Blind, we've worked very hard at building a template PowerPoint that we use and encourage everybody in our department to use, including for our presentations outside of APH and at conferences. Sometimes we are told to use a conference in another place, from another place, and sometimes that accessibility can be broken. Well, I am going to say thank you for attending. We hope you had great information, and I look forward to next time we get to work together to provide accessibility.